Picture this: 1817, Adams, Tennessee, a small farming community in Robertson County. John Bell, a prosperous farmer, is walking through his cornfield when he sees something strange: an animal sitting between the rows of corn. It has the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. John stares at it. The creature stares back, then it vanishes. That same evening, John's family hears knocking sounds on the walls of their house, loud, rhythmic knocking. They search for the source. Nothing. The knocking continues. Night after night, scratching, gnawing sounds, like rats in the walls, but there are no rats. Then the sounds get worse: chains dragging across the floor, stones thrown at the house, covers ripped off beds in the middle of the night, and then a voice, a woman's voice, whispered at first, then louder, clearer, angrier. The voice says, "I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I have been disturbed and made unhappy." The Bell family is under attack, not by a person, not by an animal, but by something they cannot see, something that can speak, something that knows their secrets, something that wants revenge. Over the next 4 years, the entity torments the Bell family relentlessly. It physically attacks John Bell and his daughter Betsy. It terrorizes the household. It becomes famous across Tennessee and beyond. Neighbors witness it. Preachers try to exorcise it. Even Andrew Jackson, future president of the United States, investigates it. And in 1820, the entity does something no ghost, spirit, or demon in American history has ever been officially documented doing: it kills John Bell. This is the story of the Bell Witch, the most famous haunting in American history, the only paranormal entity ever believed to have directly caused a human death, a case so well documented, so widely witnessed, and so terrifying that it remains unexplained over 200 years later. Let me take you through the true story of the Bell Witch, the family it haunted, and the mystery that still haunts Tennessee today. John Bell was born in North Carolina in 1750. He was a successful farmer and businessman. In the early 1800s, he moved his family to Robertson County, Tennessee, near a small settlement called Red River, later renamed Adams. John owned over 300 acres of land. He was well respected in the community, a church elder, and a family man. John and his wife Lucy had 9 children. The family lived in a large farmhouse surrounded by fields of corn, tobacco, and cotton. They were prosperous, religious, and well-liked. But in 1817, strange things began happening. It started with the sighting in the cornfield, the strange dog-rabbit creature that vanished. John dismissed it as an odd animal, perhaps diseased or deformed. He didn't think much of it. But that night the knocking began, loud banging on the outside walls of the house. John went outside with a lantern. Nothing. He went back inside. The knocking continued. His sons went out with guns, thinking it was pranksters or vandals. They found no one. The knocking happened every night for weeks. Then it moved inside the house, scratching sounds in the walls, gnawing noises. The family thought it might be rats. They searched. No rats. No signs of infestation. Then the sounds escalated, heavy objects being dragged across floors, chains rattling, furniture moving on its own, and the activity focused on 2 people, John Bell and his daughter, Betsy. Betsy Bell was 12 years old in 1817. She was described as beautiful, intelligent, and kind. She was engaged to a local man named Joshua Gardner, and for reasons unknown, the entity became obsessed with her. Betsy began experiencing physical attacks. Invisible hands slapped her face, leaving red marks. Her hair was pulled violently. She was pinched, scratched, and pushed. Witnesses saw her being struck by an unseen force. Bruises appeared on her body. She screamed in pain, but no one could stop it. John Bell also experienced attacks. He began having strange episodes where his tongue would swell, making it impossible for him to eat or speak. The episodes came without warning and lasted for hours. Doctors could find no medical cause. The family tried to keep the haunting secret, fearing ridicule, but the disturbances were too loud, too violent. Neighbors began to notice. Word spread. John Bell confided in a close friend and neighbor, James Johnston. Johnston was a religious man and offered to help. He came to the Bell home and witnessed the phenomena firsthand. He heard the knocking. He saw objects move. He watched Betsy being struck by invisible hands. Johnston advised the family to bring in others, witnesses who could verify what was happening. Soon, neighbors, church members, and curious locals were visiting the Bell home to witness the haunting. And that's when the entity began to speak. At first the voice was a whisper, faint, unintelligible. Then it grew louder, clearer. It was a woman's voice, high-pitched, sometimes mocking, sometimes angry. The voice could answer questions. It knew things it shouldn't know, private conversations, hidden secrets, events happening miles away. It quoted scripture. It sang hymns. It cursed and blasphemed. People asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" The entity gave different answers at different times. Sometimes it claimed to be the spirit of a Native American whose grave had been disturbed. Other times it said it was a witch. Eventually it identified itself as Kate Batts. Kate Batts was a real person, a neighbor of the Bells. Years earlier, John Bell had a business dispute with Kate's husband over a land deal. Kate believed John had cheated her family. She was known in the community as eccentric and temperamental. Some called her a witch behind her back. After Kate Batts died, the entity claimed to be her spirit, returned to torment John Bell for his alleged wrongdoing. The locals began calling it Kate or the Bell Witch. But the entity's identity was never certain. It changed its story. It lied. It enjoyed causing confusion and fear. What was consistent? It hated John Bell, and it was obsessed with Betsy. The Bell Witch became famous. People traveled from across Tennessee and neighboring states to witness it. The Bell home became a spectacle. John Bell, a private and religious man, was humiliated. But he couldn't stop it. The entity's abilities were astonishing. It could be in multiple places at once. Witnesses reported hearing Kate's voice in the Bell home, while simultaneously hearing it miles away at a neighbor's house. It knew secrets: who was cheating on their spouse, who had stolen money, who was lying. It would publicly expose people, humiliating them. It performed physical feats. It threw objects across rooms. It pulled covers off beds. It slapped and pinched people. Once it pulled a visitor's nose so hard he bled. Another time it yanked a woman's hair until she screamed. But most disturbing, it could mimic voices perfectly. It would imitate John Bell's voice to confuse the family. It would mimic preachers mocking their sermons. It would sing hymns in Lucy Bell's voice, while Lucy stood silent. Religious leaders tried to help. Preachers came to the Bell home to pray and perform exorcisms. The entity mocked them. It quoted scripture back at them. It laughed. It called them hypocrites. Some preachers left terrified, refusing to return. One of the most famous witnesses was Andrew Jackson. Yes, that Andrew Jackson, war hero, future president of the United States. In 1819, Jackson was living in Tennessee and heard about the Bell Witch. Skeptical but curious, he decided to investigate. Jackson and a group of men traveled to the Bell farm. As they approached the property, their wagon suddenly stopped. The horses couldn't pull it forward. The men pushed. Nothing. The wheels wouldn't turn. They checked the wagon. Nothing wrong. The wheels were not stuck. Then a voice, Kate's voice, spoke from thin air. "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight." The wagon immediately rolled forward. Jackson and his men were stunned. They reached the Bell home. That night the entity tormented them. It mocked one of Jackson's men who claimed to be a witch layer, someone who could banish spirits. The man tried to shoot the spirit with a silver bullet, a supposed remedy for witches. The gun wouldn't fire. The entity laughed, slapped the man, and chased him out of the house. Jackson reportedly said, "I'd rather fight the British again than deal with the Bell Witch." Despite all the witnesses, no one could stop it. The haunting continued, and the entity's attacks on John Bell intensified. By 1820, John Bell's health was deteriorating. The mysterious tongue-swelling episodes became more frequent and severe. He struggled to eat. He lost weight. He was weak, exhausted, and tormented. The entity gloated. Kate's voice would say, "Old Jack Bell is dying. I will kill him." On December 19, 1820, John Bell became extremely ill. He was bedridden, unable to speak or swallow. The family called for a doctor. By the time the doctor arrived, John was unconscious. The next morning, December 20th, 1820, John Bell died. He was 70 years old. Immediately after his death, the family found something strange. In the medicine cabinet was a small vial of dark liquid that no one recognized. They asked the doctor. He hadn't left it. No one knew where it came from. Lucy Bell asked, "What is this?" The entity's voice answered, "I gave it to him. That's what killed him." To test it, they gave a drop of the liquid to the family cat. The cat convulsed and died within minutes. The entity had poisoned John Bell. At John Bell's funeral, the entity's voice was heard singing loudly and mockingly. Witnesses reported hearing Kate laughing and celebrating as the casket was lowered into the ground. John Bell is the only person in American history officially believed to have been killed by a supernatural entity. After John's death, the attacks on the Bell family lessened. The entity focused on Betsy. It continued to torment her, demanding she break off her engagement to Joshua Gardner. Betsy was in love with Joshua. They planned to marry, but the entity harassed her relentlessly. It whispered in her ear constantly, "Don't marry Joshua Gardner. Don't marry Joshua Gardner." The psychological torture was unbearable. In 1821, Betsy broke off the engagement. She couldn't take it anymore. Joshua was heartbroken, but he understood. He left the area. After Betsy ended the engagement, the entity's voice spoke to the family one last time. It said, "I am going now. I will be gone for 7 years." And then silence. The knocking stopped. The attacks stopped. The voice disappeared. The Bell Witch was gone. For 7 years the Bell family lived in peace. Betsy eventually married another man, Richard Powell, a local school teacher. Lucy Bell remained on the farm. Life returned to normal. But in 1828, exactly 7 years later, the entity returned. The knocking began again. The voice returned. But this time it only spoke to Lucy Bell and her sons. It stayed for a few weeks, mostly conversing with Lucy about religion, the afterlife, and the future. It made predictions about the Civil War, world wars, and technological advancements. Some of these predictions reportedly came true. Then it said, "I am going now. I will return in 107 years to a descendant of the Bell family." And it left. That was 1828. The entity predicted it would return in 1935. Members of the Bell family reportedly experienced disturbances in the 1930s, but nothing as severe as the original haunting. The Bell Witch became a legend. Books were written. The story spread across America. Skeptics dismissed it as mass hysteria or hoax. Believers pointed to the hundreds of witnesses, farmers, doctors, preachers, even Andrew Jackson, who testified to the phenomena. In the 1890s, a book called An Authenticated History of the Bell Witch was published by M.V. Ingram, who interviewed surviving witnesses and family members. The book documented testimonies and verified many details. Today, the Bell Witch is considered the most credible haunting case in American history because of the sheer number of credible witnesses and the detailed documentation. So what really happened? Theories vary. Some believe it was genuinely supernatural, a spirit, demon, or witch seeking revenge on John Bell. Others suggest it was a poltergeist, a psychic phenomenon generated unconsciously by Betsy Bell during puberty, a time of emotional stress. Poltergeist activity often centers on adolescence. Skeptics argue it was a hoax perpetrated by Betsy or another family member, but this theory struggles to explain the hundreds of independent witnesses who experienced the phenomena outside the Bell home. Another theory, poisoning. John Bell's symptoms, tongue swelling, difficulty swallowing, are consistent with certain poisons. Perhaps someone in the family or community poisoned him and created the haunting as cover. But who? And how do you explain the phenomena witnessed by so many? Medical theories suggest John may have suffered from a neurological condition like trigeminal neuralgia, which can cause tongue swelling and facial pain. Stress and fear could have worsened his condition, but this doesn't explain the other phenomena. Psychological theories suggest mass hysteria. In isolated religious communities, fear of witchcraft and the devil was real. Once the idea of a haunting took hold, people's perceptions could have been distorted. Unexplained noises became the witch. Coincidences became evidence. But again, this doesn't fully explain the detailed, consistent testimonies. The truth is, we don't know. Over 200 years later, the Bell Witch remains unexplained. Today, the Bell Witch legend is a major part of Tennessee folklore. The town of Adams celebrates it. There's a Bell Witch cave on the former Bell property which is said to be haunted. Tours are offered. A Bell Witch festival is held annually. The original Bell home is gone, but the land remains. Visitors report strange experiences, cold spots, mysterious sounds, feelings of being watched. Betsy Bell lived until 1888. She rarely spoke about the haunting publicly, but those close to her said she was traumatized by it for life. She never remarried after Richard Powell died. She lived quietly, avoiding attention. Lucy Bell lived until 1837. She reportedly maintained until her death that the haunting was real and that the entity killed her husband. The Bell Witch story has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films. It's been studied by paranormal researchers and historians, and it remains one of the few ghost stories taken seriously by scholars because of the extensive documentation and credible witnesses. 1817 to 1821, 4 years of terror, a family tormented by an invisible entity that could speak, attack, and kill, hundreds of witnesses, one death officially attributed to a ghost. The Bell Witch, the only spirit in American history believed to have murdered someone. John Bell died December 20th, 1820. The cause of death, according to his family and witnesses, poisoned by a supernatural entity. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the Bell Witch case is extraordinary. The number of witnesses, the consistency of testimonies, the documentation, the fact that it happened in broad daylight, in front of crowds, over several years. Something happened to the Bell family, something terrifying, something that killed John Bell and traumatized his family for generations. Was it a ghost, a demon, a witch's curse, a poltergeist, a hoax, mass hysteria, poison, and paranoia? We'll never know. But over 200 years later, people still travel to Adams, Tennessee, hoping to encounter the Bell Witch, and some say they do. Strange sounds, cold spots, a woman's voice in the darkness whispering, "I'm still here." The Bell Witch, the most famous haunting in American history, the only ghost ever believed to have killed someone, and a mystery that refuses to die.